Have you ever wondered why some words, ideas and thoughts catch the world's imagination and spread like wildfire? These ideas are the focus of today's video. In the next 10 minutes, I will review 5 well-known software laws. We'll delve into the background of each story and see where they came from. And more importantly, we'll see if the advice can actually be applied to help us write better software. And I'm betting you won't be able to guess all 5 laws that I've picked. I expect that you will likely have countered the first law that we're going to dissect. So this law is called Murphy's Law. Now, this law states that anything that can go wrong will in fact go wrong. So fun fact, Murphy in this instance was Captain Edward A. Murphy of the US Air Force. Now, this famous saying apparently came about in 1949 while Murphy was performing a study about the effects of rapid deceleration on pilots. So, nothing whatsoever to do with software. Now, the origin of the phrase can't even really be agreed upon. Now, according to the Wikipedia, Murphy was performing some type of test involving the G-forces and chimpanzees. Sounds like a badass test. Now, one of these tests failed because Murphy's assistant calibrated something wrong. And Murphy apparently said something along the lines of, if that guy has any way of making a mistake, he will. Now, Murphy's Law is claimed to have been coined later on by his colleagues. His saying was basically condensed to, if it can happen, it will happen. And in mockery, his colleagues named this Murphy's Law. Murphy was also accredited with 15 other laws, all of them pretty moany if I'm honest. So it sounds like all Murphy did was complain all day. Definitely hate to be stuck at a party with Murphy. If everything seems to be going well, you have absolutely overlooked something. So, bit of a downer. The truth is that one of the most famous sayings used in software has nothing to do with software whatsoever, and was never actually said by its creator. So this is a fail. Now, just because the origin of this law is nonsense, that does not mean that the advice isn't handy. So to get the most out of this law, in the context of software, as you write code, you should always keep in mind that at some point your code will inevitably go wrong. And to prevent the worst case scenario from occurring, you should always build in fail-safes. So we can do this by creating things like unit tests, integration tests, CI/CD pipelines, features under feature flags with kill switches. All of these are great practices that will help protect your code when things inevitably go wrong. The next law is the most important one that every developer needs to follow. And this law is called the smash the subscribe button law. And if you're new to this channel, then welcome. My name is John and I release a new video every Sunday that will help you to become a better coding legend. It takes a lot of time to research and edit these videos, so if you get some value from it, then please consider clicking on the like button. The second law is definitely one to get you pondering and thinking, and this law is known as Worth's Law. Now, software is getting slower more rapidly than hardware becomes faster. Now, at first glance, this statement might sound facetious. However, what if we look at how software has evolved? Now, Windows 95 was an operating system created by Microsoft, classic. And it shipped with a web browser, drivers to run hardware, tools to listen to and record audio, and even came with a few games. Now, Windows 95 was 19 megabytes in size and needed 50 megabytes to run. Now, looking at my phone right now, the voice recording app alone takes 90 megabytes in size, which is double. Windows 10 is over 32 gigabytes in size, which is 133 times bigger than Windows 95. And Windows 10 is definitely not 133 times faster, nor does it come with 133 times more additional features. So what gives? Now, when you start thinking about this statement in relation to how software size has ballooned over the years, it's interesting. Every year, developers have more and more reliance on using third-party packages within our applications. Yes, these packages make us more productive and prevent us from reinventing the wheel. However, it comes with a cost. Under the hood, our software is becoming more bloated. Under the hood, our software is becoming more of a mystery of how it actually works, and we're more at risk of things occurring that we're simply not aware of. Worth's Law was made by a Swiss developer called Nicholas Worth. Wirth first introduced this concept within a paper that he authored called A Plea for Lean Software. Now, this paper is only 4 pages in length, and you can find a link to it within the related tutorial section below. So, if you have a spare 5 minutes, I recommend you give it a read. Wirth points out that hardware will typically need to jump many megabytes in size whenever a new software release was made. Now, even though this statement was made in the 90s, I still think the impacts of it are even more prevalent today. Whenever I need to upgrade any software, iOS or app, the memory and the computing power required by that update always seems to go up, never down. Now, how can we use this law to improve our software? Keep your dependencies to a minimum. Anything which is unused, delete it. Ensure that when you need to use a package, you use the leanest version possible, and doing this will help you to break Wirth's law. The next law is another one that at first glance might feel like a bit of a joke. However, from my experience, it's a very true concept. This law is called the 90-90 rule. So the first 90% of code accounts for the first 90% of the development time. The remaining 10% of the code accounts for the other 90% of the development time. Now, obviously, if you do the maths on this one, it doesn't add up. The statement adds up to 180%, meaning most software development projects will run significantly over the deadline. And this happens because people tend to underestimate how long it will take to do the intricate parts of a project. When assigning story points in a sprint, I always like to bring up the classic quote, "The devil is within the details," whenever I feel like someone is underestimating story points. And just like how the bigger part of an iceberg is floating underwater, when planning a task, it is very easy to forget all the other smaller related tasks that go with it. When doing the work, what is the chance you will get merge conflicts? You'll lose time while waiting for someone to review your code. You'll encounter some sort of dependency conflicts, or you may even encounter failed tests within areas of your code base that has nothing to do with what you've touched. That is very annoying. So my advice is to keep this adage in mind when you're planning, and always give yourself 50% more wiggle room in case something goes wrong. According to the research, humans are susceptible to something called the planning fallacy. Now, the planning fallacy is a cognitive bias that describes people's tendencies to underestimate the amount of time, cost, and risk of future actions, while overestimating the benefits of those actions. Now, everyone, including myself, is rife with making this mistake. Now, there's a famous developer which is called Scott Hanselman, and he runs a podcast called Hansel Minutes. Now, in case you didn't know, a Hansel Minute was coined by his colleagues because he used to say tasks would take him 10 minutes and it would take all day. The term Hansel Minutes is a real-life example of the 90-90 rule in effect. The next law is one that I didn't fully grasp when I read it for the first time. Any piece of software reflects the organizational structure that produced it. Now, this law is called Conway's Law, and the first time I read it, I didn't really get it at all. And it's only when you start to think about this in a little more detail that it becomes really insightful. Now, the full law is organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structure of these organizations. Well, that was a mouthful. Now, when you think about this statement, you need to pin your thinking back to how companies are structured. Imagine that an organization has split its development teams into two. One team is solely comprised of front-end developers, and the other team is solely comprised of back-end developers. A new feature needs to be built, and depending on which team works on the issue will determine how that problem is solved. Different teams have different skills, different organizational contexts, different influences with IT, different. So depending on which team works on it will depend on the outcome of that code. And this is why how you structure a team within your organization has hidden consequences at the code level. And this is a very subtle point that's very easy to overlook. Keep in mind that how you structure your teams will influence your code. The last quote I want to mention seems like a fitting one. Now, the idea behind going over all these laws is to help you become even more of a coding legend. However, as quoted by Jessica Gaston, one man's crappy software is another man's full-time job. Now, despite lots of research, I'm unable to find anything about Jessica, who she is, and when she said it. This could be a made-up thing, however, I like it. The takeaway is that even if you ignore everything that I've mentioned in this video and you end up writing crappy software, at least you'll be keeping someone else employed to maintain your monstrosity. Enjoy. Now, if you haven't already, there's two things that I ask of you. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to carry on seeing my videos, click on subscribe. And if you want to help me grow this channel, click on the like button. It really does help me with the YouTube algorithm, so I'd greatly appreciate it. Now, there is one final law that I left out of this article, Brooks' Law. Now, if you want to find out more about this law, then I've created a video all about Fred Brooks, his life, and why he was such a coding legend. So I recommend that you check this out. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are in this world. Until next Sunday, happy coding.